My fiancée cheated on me during my bachelor party, so I skipped the wedding and left her alone to explain to the guests why the groom's family and the groom were missing. 5 years of love, trust, and planning for a future together. Everything seemed perfect, but in an instant, betrayal tore it all apart. The woman I thought I knew, the one I was about to marry, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. As the truth came crashing down, I realized the price of her lies wasn't just the end of our relationship, but the destruction of everything I believed in. Please support my channel by subscribing and liking the video. Stay connected for more captivating stories. I had been with Jelly for over 5 years. We started dating when I was 26, and now, at 31, we were finally preparing to get married. The idea of committing to someone for the rest of my life was both exciting and intimidating, but there was no one else I could imagine spending my future with. Jelly was 30, a smart, kind woman with a sense of humor that could light up a room. We'd been through so much together, from the highs of new adventures to the lows of difficult moments. Everything seemed perfect as we moved forward into this next chapter, planning our wedding. We'd been engaged for over a year. During this time, we talked about our future, the house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, and the life we'd build together. I could picture it all so clearly, but deep down, something had been nagging at me. It wasn't just pre-wedding jitters, it felt more like a sense that something was off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. Still, I ignored the feeling. After all, we were about to get married. This was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives. There were moments, though, when I questioned whether we were truly ready. Jelly didn't seem as excited as I thought she'd be. The wedding plans were moving forward, but I couldn't shake the thought that something might be missing, something I wasn't seeing. Despite all this, I tried to stay positive, telling myself that every relationship has its doubts before the big day. I was hopeful, almost convinced that I was just overthinking things. Little did I know, everything was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. My friends had been planning my bachelor party for months. They were excited, especially since I was the first one in our group to get married. We weren't looking for anything crazy, just a chill weekend to hang out one last time before the wedding. The plan was simple: rent a cabin by the lake, enjoy some drinks, play games, and have a good time. It sounded like the perfect way to unwind and have fun with my closest friends. At first, I wasn't sure about going. Jelly didn't seem too eager about having a big party, but she said she would be fine with me going. She didn't plan a bachelorette party for herself either. Instead, she decided to focus on work that weekend to make sure everything was ready for the wedding. I didn't mind at first, but as the weekend got closer, I started to feel a bit guilty. A part of me didn't want to leave her alone, especially with the wedding only days away. I was torn between staying with her and going to the party I'd promised my friends. In the end, I decided to go. Jelly convinced me it would be better for me to spend time with my friends. She said it would be a bad idea to let them down, so I went, even though I felt a little guilty about not being there with her. The cabin was nice, and my friends had prepared everything: lots of snacks, enough beer to last the weekend, and even a few surprises. We spent the first night around a fire, telling stories and laughing. It was exactly how I imagined it would be: fun, laid back, and relaxing. But even with all the distractions, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong, and I found myself thinking about Jelly. It didn't feel right to be so far away from her at such an important time. The next morning I woke up feeling different. Maybe it was the hangover or just the overwhelming sense of guilt, but something about being away from Jelly didn't sit right with me. I had gone into this weekend with the intention of enjoying myself, but as the hours passed, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I knew she was alone at home, working, while I was out here having fun with my friends. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, but that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. It was like my gut was telling me I needed to be home with her. By noon, I had made up my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease, and I knew I had to go back. I didn't want to stay in the cabin another minute, not with this cloud hanging over me. My friends tried to convince me to stay, saying I needed to enjoy my last weekend as a bachelor, but I wasn't hearing it anymore. I just wanted to get back home, surprise Jelly, and maybe we could have a quiet evening before everything got hectic with the wedding preparations. I didn't want her to feel like I was abandoning her, especially now, so close to the big day. Without telling anyone, I packed up quickly and left. The drive back was long, but my mind was racing the whole time. I thought about how happy we were when we first started planning our wedding and how it was all supposed to be perfect. I kept wondering if I was just overthinking things. But the closer I got to home, the more anxious I felt. Something didn't feel right, and I needed to find out what it was. The need to be there for Jelly was stronger than ever. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something that immediately set off alarms in my mind. There was a car parked outside that wasn't Jelly's. I didn't recognize it, and her car wasn't in the usual spot in the garage. She had told me she was working, but now I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. Why was her car not in the garage if she was supposed to be at work? It didn't make sense. I tried to shake it off, thinking maybe she had just parked it somewhere else, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at the house. I could feel my heart racing. Should I go inside? Should I just call her and ask what was going on? I wasn't sure, but something told me I needed to know. I decided to call Jelly, trying to keep my voice calm. When she picked up, she sounded unusually upbeat, too casual, almost like she was hiding something. I asked her where she was, and without hesitation, she said, "I'm at work." "Why?" Her answer didn't sit right with me, and I could feel my pulse quicken. I hung up, not sure what to do next. My instincts told me to investigate further. Instead of going through the front door, I quietly walked around to the back of the house, feeling like I was doing something I shouldn't. When I reached the window to the bedroom, I paused. The blinds were drawn, but I could hear voices. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell one of them was Jelly's, and the other voice wasn't. I froze in place, my stomach dropping as I heard laughter, followed by sounds that made my blood run cold. I didn't need to see anything more. The truth hit me like a punch in the gut. My fiancé was not alone. I stood there in shock, not sure what to do. My heart was pounding in my chest as I listened to the sounds coming from the bedroom window. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jelly's voice, soft and playful, mixed with the deep voice of a man I didn't recognize. It was clear they were both enjoying themselves, and every second felt like a dagger to my chest. I wanted to rush in, confront them, but I couldn't move. My mind was racing. How had this happened? Why didn't I see it coming? I pulled out my phone instinctively and hit record, unsure if it would be useful later, but desperate to capture something, anything, that would explain what was happening. I stood there, frozen, as the sounds grew louder. Jelly was whispering things that made my stomach turn, and the man was laughing softly. Then, I heard her say something that hit me hard. "I can't believe I'm doing this here. It feels so good. I want another round." That was it. The truth was out. She wasn't just spending time with another man. She was with him intimately, betraying me in the worst possible way. I felt like I was suffocating. My body felt numb, and the world around me seemed to blur. I could have burst in through the door, but in that moment, I didn't feel like I needed to. I already knew the truth. I wanted to scream, to break down, but instead I silently walked away. I didn't know what to do next. I couldn't face her, not right now. I didn't want to let her see the devastation on my face, the pain that was slowly swallowing me whole. So I left. I didn't care about confrontation. I just wanted to disappear. I drove back to my friends without saying a word. I couldn't think straight. My mind was a mess, and my heart felt like it was breaking into pieces. I knew what I had heard, and there was no denying it. Jelly had betrayed me, and I was standing there, helpless. I couldn't even bring myself to confront her. What was the point? What could I say? My body felt heavy, like I was carrying the weight of 1,000 bricks, but at the same time, I was numb, completely detached from everything around me. I didn't know how to handle it. Instead of facing her or yelling, I just walked away. Slowly, I made my way back to my car, feeling like I was in a fog. I wanted to forget what I had just heard, to push it out of my mind, but I couldn't. It was like the sounds were playing on repeat in my head, over and over again. I felt sick to my stomach, like I had swallowed something bitter that wouldn't go away. But I couldn't stay there, staring at the house, pretending like everything was fine when my entire world had just crumbled. I drove back to the cabin without telling anyone what had happened. I didn't want to explain it, didn't want to talk about it. I needed to escape. I didn't care about the bachelor party anymore. I wasn't interested in any of it. I just needed to drown out the thoughts that kept swirling in my head. I wanted to be numb, to forget the pain, even if just for a little while. When I got back to the cabin, I didn't speak to anyone. I grabbed a drink, sat down, and sank into my own misery. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Everything felt wrong, and I just needed to shut it all out. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could understand what I was going through. When I got back to the cabin, I went straight to Scene, my best friend. He saw the look on my face before I even said anything. He knew something was wrong, so I told him everything. Everything I had heard, everything I felt, so I couldn't hold it in anymore. His face changed, and I could see the anger building in him too. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just listened as I poured out the story, and then he responded the way I needed him to. Sign was pissed, as angry as I was. He immediately started coming up with ideas, different ways to make Jelly pay for what she had done. He didn't sugarcoat anything. We both agreed that confronting her in person was not what I wanted. I didn't need to see her face or hear more lies. No, I wanted to hurt her, but in a way that she would feel the consequences, something she couldn't brush off. The more we talked, the more we came up with the perfect plan. I didn't want her to just feel bad. I wanted her to be humiliated. I wanted her to understand that there were consequences for what she did to me, and not just emotional ones. She needed to feel the weight of what she had done. Every step we discussed made me feel more and more determined. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, and I wasn't going to let her make me feel weak. Scene kept pushing me to take action, but I didn't want to jump in too quickly. I had to think it through. I needed her to understand that this wasn't just a mistake. It was betrayal. And no matter how much I loved her, I couldn't let her just walk away without any consequences. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making her realize the damage she caused. The plan was set, and I was ready. After talking things through with Sane, I decided the best move was to keep things normal on the outside. Jelly didn't need to know anything had changed. I wanted her to believe everything was fine, so I kept playing my part, sending sweet messages, pretending I was still looking forward to the wedding, like nothing had happened. I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. I didn't want to give her a chance to play the victim or try to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. The next day, I sent her a text saying I'd be back the following day. I kept it casual, telling her I'd see her soon and that everything was going great at the cabin. She didn't suspect a thing. She replied, "I'm going to my parents' house tomorrow until the wedding. I'll see you before we leave." It sounded so innocent, like the plans hadn't changed at all. It was almost too easy. When I texted back, I purposely kept it light. "No worries. Let's leave the emotions for the big day." She didn't even hesitate to agree. I knew then that I had her right where I wanted her, believing that everything was going as planned. Even though inside I was burning with anger, I kept my face calm, played my role, and made her think I was the same guy she had always known. I didn't want her to panic, to get suspicious. I needed her to think that the wedding was still happening, that I was still on board. The wedding would go on, but not the way she thought. In a way, I started to feel numb. I wasn't sure if I was acting for my own sanity or if I really believed the calm front I was putting on, but I had to stick to the plan. It was only a matter of time before everything unraveled, and when it did, Jelly would realize exactly what she had lost. The wedding day arrived, and it felt like I was walking into a storm. On the outside, everything looked perfect. Jelly was glowing in her wedding dress, surrounded by friends and family. The music was playing, the decorations were stunning, and the guests were all excited, expecting a celebration of love. But inside, it was a different story. I kept my emotions hidden, playing my part, but everything was building up to something I couldn't control anymore. Jelly looked so happy, and I couldn't help but think about everything that had led up to this moment. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know how badly she had hurt me. As we stood at the altar, the vows started, and I thought I might actually go through with it, pretending to be the man she thought I was. But then, something changed. My mind flashed back to everything I had learned about her betrayal, and I knew I couldn't keep lying. As the ceremony continued, the tension in my chest grew. The guests were all watching us, waiting for the next part, the kiss, the I do. I couldn't go through with it. The thought of spending my life with someone who had betrayed me was unbearable. That's when I noticed San's message on my phone. He was ready to help me, to make the chaos start. In that moment, I stopped pretending. I couldn't go on with this charade. I looked at Jelly, and everything in me screamed to expose the truth. I couldn't let her go on with this, pretending like nothing was wrong. I turned away, the pressure too much, and made my move. The wedding day, once filled with excitement, quickly turned into complete chaos. Everyone in the room froze as the truth came crashing down, and I knew my life would never be the same again. The chaos at the wedding was just the beginning. As soon as I walked away, not looking back, I knew Jelly's problems were just starting. She thought the wedding was still happening, but the truth was already out. I had taken everything into my own hands. There was one thing that mattered to me more than anything else at that moment. I wasn't going to let her off the hook without facing the real consequences of what she'd done to me. I knew Jelly had spent a lot of money on the wedding, and I had agreed to cover most of the expenses, but that was before I found out about her betrayal. I couldn't, in good conscience, let my money pay for a celebration built on lies. I had already paid a portion, but the remaining balance was still pending, and I made sure to postpone the payment as long as possible. The wedding planners were furious when they realized I wasn't showing up or paying the rest of the money. They called me, asking what was going on, but I was firm. I wasn't going to help fund this event anymore. I had my reasons, and I wasn't going to explain myself to anyone. Jelly, of course, tried to fix things. She probably thought her dad could step in, smooth things over, and save face. But the wedding organizers weren't having it. They weren't going to let her leave until the full payment was made, and even then, they demanded extra money for the delay. I could almost feel the humiliation seeping through every word of the conversation. Her father had to step up and sign an agreement, promising to pay off the debt if Jelly couldn't settle it within the deadline. Watching all of this unfold was something I didn't expect to feel good about, but deep down, I knew it was the only way for her to learn what she had done. This wasn't just about money. It was about making her realize the true cost of betrayal. Once the dust settled after the wedding disaster, I knew Jelly's life was about to change in ways she never imagined. The chaos didn't end when the ceremony was canceled. In fact, it had only just begun. Her financial problems spiraled out of control. She had spent so much money on the wedding, believing that everything would go perfectly. She never expected the rug to be pulled out from under her like that. Her father, desperate to protect his reputation and save face, tried to help her pay off the wedding debt, but that was only the start of her downfall. As soon as people found out what had really happened, her affair, the betrayal, it didn't take long for her social circle to crumble. Friends who she thought were loyal turned their backs on her. Those who had supported her before started questioning her actions. They couldn't look at her the same way anymore. She was no longer the girl they had known. Her parents, too, started distancing themselves. At first, they tried to pretend that everything would go back to normal, But as the truth sank in, they couldn't ignore the reality of her actions. Her father, already angry about the wedding's financial disaster, was furious when he found out she had lied about everything. He stopped supporting her, and the worst part was, she couldn't blame anyone but herself. Her friends were gone, her family was angry, and the world she had built for herself was falling apart. I heard through mutual contacts that she had to move out of the apartment. She couldn't afford it anymore. She was living on the couch of a friend, and every day felt like a reminder of what she had lost. To me, it wasn't enough. I had been the one to bear the pain of her betrayal, and now she had to face the real consequences of her actions. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her bed, and now she was lying in it. Months passed, but Jelly couldn't seem to let go of what had happened. Every few weeks I'd get a new message from her, some desperate plea to talk. She tried calling from different numbers, sending texts with apologies, and even sending letters to my parents' house. It was like she thought I would somehow change my mind and forgive her, but I was beyond that point. Every time I saw her name pop up on my phone, I felt a mixture of anger and disgust. I had blocked her on everything, but she found ways around it. It became clear that she wasn't going to just let this die. I wasn't sure what she thought would happen, but every message was more desperate than the last. One night, while I was sitting in a cafe, I saw her walk in. I don't know if it was by accident or if she had somehow tracked me down, but there she was, standing beside my table. She looked different, haggard, worn down by the months of regret and loneliness. It was hard to look at her, but I didn't turn away. She sat down, asking if we could talk. I didn't know what she expected me to say. She went on and on about how sorry she was, how she regretted everything. She said she made a huge mistake, that she just needed one last chance to explain herself. She told me how she felt lost without me, how she wanted to make things right. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel a little bit of pity for her, but it didn't change anything. Nothing she said could undo the betrayal. When she asked, "What now?" I already knew what my answer was. I told her that I couldn't go back, that I wasn't the same person anymore. I had moved on, and there was nothing left to fix. Her face fell, and for a second, I thought I saw her truly realize the depth of what she had lost. I got up and walked away, leaving her there, still trying to hold on to something that was long gone. I wasn't prepared for what Jelly said when I finally agreed to listen to her. I hadn't seen her in months, but there she was, standing in front of me, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She started right away, trying to justify everything, explaining her actions like they were somehow excusable. She told me that what happened wasn't really infidelity in her eyes, that it was just a one-time mistake. She kept insisting it wasn't about love, just about exploring herself before making a lifelong commitment. The more she spoke, the more I realized how much she was trying to manipulate me. She explained how the affair was just a way to get rid of guilt. She claimed she needed that one last taste of freedom before being tied down forever. I could feel her trying to make me believe that everything was so complicated for her. She even tried to paint herself as the victim, saying how she had been confused, that it wasn't what she wanted, but she did it to get over her own insecurities. I could see the tears in her eyes, but I wasn't buying it. She told me over and over that she regretted it, that she hadn't really understood what she was doing until it was too late. She said, "I didn't mean to hurt you. Please understand. I just wanted one last moment before our forever." She wanted me to believe that her actions had no real meaning, that it was just an impulse and that I should forgive her and move forward. But I couldn't. How could I? Then came the manipulation. She told me she couldn't live with herself, that she had learned her lesson, and that we could still have everything we had before. She said she loved me and that I loved her, so it wasn't too late to make it work. But nothing she said could change the truth. I wasn't the same person anymore, and no amount of excuses or tears would fix what she had done. I listened to everything Jelly had to say, but as the words left her mouth, I felt more and more distant. It was like I was hearing the same excuses over and over again, and it made my blood boil. She seemed to believe that if she explained herself enough, if she made herself seem vulnerable enough, I would forget everything and just take her back. But the truth was, I couldn't forget what she had done. I couldn't just push it aside and act like it didn't matter. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I saw her for who she really was. She wasn't the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted. She was someone who had made a choice, and now she was trying to convince me that it was all a misunderstanding. The hurt, the betrayal, everything I had felt wasn't going to just vanish because she said sorry, and I wasn't about to fall for her manipulation. I wasn't going to pretend that everything could go back to normal. I told her calmly but firmly that it was over. There was no going back. I couldn't be with someone who had broken my trust so deeply. I told her that I wasn't the same person anymore, and I wasn't the same man who would forgive and forget. She looked at me like she expected me to soften, to change my mind, but I didn't. I wouldn't. I reminded her of the truth that she had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. It wasn't about revenge, it was about respect. She had lost mine, and nothing she said would get it back. I walked away from that moment knowing it was the last time I'd ever look back. There was no forgiveness in me for her, not after everything she had done. It was time to move on, and that's exactly what I planned to do. The moment I spoke those words, I could see the change in her face, the shock, the disbelief, and then the anger. Jelly had always believed that no matter what, I would forgive her. After all, we had been through so much together. But this time, it was different. I wasn't the person I used to be. The trust we once had was shattered, and I couldn't pick up the pieces anymore. I had given her every chance to be honest, to make things right, but she chose a different path. She had betrayed me, and I had no intention of going back to someone who could do that. She tried to convince me again, pleading for a chance to fix things, but I stayed firm. I had already made up my mind. Her words didn't hold weight anymore. I didn't feel pity for her, and I wasn't looking for closure. I didn't want her back in my life, and no amount of begging or reasoning would change that. It felt strange, standing there knowing that what was left of us was now completely gone. I had been in love with her, believed in our future, and planned to spend my life with her. But all of that crumbled the moment she crossed a line she couldn't undo. I didn't owe her an explanation. I didn't need to justify why I was walking away. The hurt was too deep, and I had nothing left to give. She tried one last time, asking if we could at least remain friends, but I refused. There was no going back. I couldn't pretend like nothing happened. I was done. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it was the only one that made sense. I turned and walked away, knowing I would never look back. The relationship was over, and this time, there would be no turning back. In the weeks that followed, I started to feel lighter, even though the pain was still there, lurking in the back of my mind. It was strange at first, being alone after everything that had happened. For so long I had planned my life around Jelly, imagining what our future together would look like. But the truth was, that future was built on lies, and I couldn't keep holding on to it. I focused on the things I had neglected, my work, my friends, my passions. It wasn't easy, but slowly, I started to rebuild my life. I spent more time with the people who cared about me, the ones who had stood by me through it all. It became clear to me that I wasn't as lost as I thought I was. The pain of the betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined me. I realized that I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. I began to let go of the anger too. For a while, it had been consuming me, driving me to seek revenge, to make her feel what I felt. But as time passed, I saw that holding on to that anger wasn't helping me move forward. It was keeping me stuck in the past, trapped in something that wasn't even real anymore. I learned that it was okay to let go, to forgive myself for not seeing the truth sooner. I didn't need Jelly in my life to be happy. I was the one who had to heal, and that meant putting myself first, something I hadn't done in a long time. I started looking forward to what was next, not what was behind me. The chapter with her was over, and I was ready for the next one. I wasn't perfect, but I was moving forward, and that was enough.